All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the 216th Governance and Risk Call here at MakerDAO. My name is Peyton. I go by Pros11 online, and I am one of the governance facilitators here. Happy to be hosting this call with all of you today. I'm joined by a bunch of core unit members, delegates, other ecosystem actors, and contributors to MakerDAO. This is our weekly chat where we talk about all things governance and risk. So it's a pleasure to have those of you that were able to join us live. And if you're watching the recording, I appreciate you staying up to date on the latest here at Maker. We do have a bit of an agenda to get into, but before we do that, we do have some ground rules to help make sure this call goes smoothly. Obviously, there's people of all sorts of different backgrounds, experience levels, and knowledge levels of the Maker protocol. If you're here and you're interested, like, you are more than welcome. So don't be shy. If you have questions or comments, let's just follow a few of these rules if we can to make things a little bit easier. Like I said, we are recording this, so let's try not to talk over each other, as that's an unpleasant experience, both live and in the recording. If you can, if you're comfortable, go ahead and throw on that camera. It's really great to see the people that are here live engaging with us. See a few people at some houses, perhaps here in Barcelona. That's awesome to see. Thanks for joining us today. We have reactions, which is always fun. If you really like something, want to give it a heart or a thumbs up. But more importantly, for me at least, is the raised hand function. You can always use that if you'd like to join our impromptu speakers list. More than happy to basically wait till whoever is talking is finished. I'll take a look if there's any raised hands and kick the mic over to you. If you're uncomfortable or otherwise unwilling to hop on the mic, you can always drop your questions and comments in the chat. We'll circle to them at an appropriate time. And yeah, the only other thing is try to introduce yourself the first time you speak. When I'm passing over the mic, I'll try to do it myself, but sometimes I forget. I see a lot of you every day, if not every week. So if you can help me out, make sure everyone in the audience and on the recording later knows who you are. And if you're speaking on the behalf of anyone, that would be awesome. All right, that was a lot of words, but the crux of it, if you take us to the next slide, David. DBAA, we'll get along great. All right, so I mentioned an agenda earlier. We've arrived at that point where I tell you what it is. As usual, we'll start with our votes, what's going on in the land of the Maker improvement proposals, and a roundup of what's happening on the forum. For initiative updates, we're excited to host Dennis from Dux to tell us a little bit about the gasless voting feature that was recently rolled out. And then quite topical discussion after that, we'll be talking about recent market events and how the conditions are affecting MakerDAO. So look forward to getting in to all that good stuff with y'all. Again, if you have questions, comments, anything you want to prepare, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll work into the conversation. All right, well, let's carry on and see what's happening in the land of votes. On-chain wise was fairly straightforward this week. We had one weekly poll that was passed. Those were activating the stablecoin vault liquidation parameters and turning on auctions. That originated as one of our last signal requests, I believe, from the people over at RiskDAO. So be looking forward to that in an upcoming executive. We also have 13 active ratification polls, so pretty busy month there, or at least next week and a half, but you'll hear more about those in our next segment. As far as executives goes, we are still waiting on the passage one that has parameter changes for Monetalis. We're enabling the DCIAM for our ETH. That's basically turning on the debt ceiling, to say it a little bit simpler. We've got some housekeeping changes for the real world assets vaults, updating some of their agreements and where those documents are pointing. Currently, we have about 75,000 in GARE supporting that. I believe the hat was a little bit over 100,000. So we were not quite past there. So keep an eye on that and maybe give it a vote if you haven't already. Next week, we are not planning an executive proposal, so barring any emergency circumstances that we might have the chance to talk about later. Our next executive will not be until a week from next Wednesday. Awesome. That should be all on the votes front, so I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to one of our MIP editors, Gala, if you want to take it away.
Hello, sorry. Hi, Peyton. Hello, everyone. This is Ella from MIP. So this week we are in our first week of ratification polls. Let's take a look at them and the results so far. So we have from CoinShares and original $MIP86 and MIP87. And then the two proposals from Monetalis, MIP88 Redwood Frisian and MIP89 Arrow Andalusian. So you can see the results so far. They were taken like one hour ago. Next, we have 6 core unit budgets. So for DAX, IS, GovComs, SAS, SES, and Tech 001. All of them are DAI budgets. And we also have 3 other proposals. So for Immunified Security Core Unit, we have a mandate refresh and also Psychonauts facilitator onboarding proposal. And we also have a proposal to raise the emulated surplus buffer upper limit to 1 billion. So these are our 13 ratification polls that are on chain right now. You still have over 10 days to go and cast your votes. Next, let's take a look at our proposals in RFC, the ones that are active right now, most of them eligible for January. So for our top level MIPs, we have MIP80, which defines how MKR is to be used as compensation. It's a work in progress MIP. You can go and comment if you haven't done so. Give your feedback, it will be appreciated. We have also MIP90 Liquid AAA Structured Credit and Money Market Fund, and MIP91 describing a prospective contract against governance attacks. Next, we have a proposal to remove MIP14, which defines a generic process to transfer DAI from the protocol to a specific ETH address. And we have 2 amendment proposals. One is to remove the MIP51 calendar exception that omits December as a monthly governance cycle, and one to adjust recognized delegate participation metrics. This will soon be split into 2 sub-proposals. We are working on it. We also have a proposal to onboard Chainlink automation as a keeper network, and 1 new special purpose fund, MIP55C3 sub-proposal 11, that will fund the creation of industry-first DeFi focused database to fine-tune general purpose large language models. This model will be used for the benefit of makers' risk modeling and governance communications. It replaces MIP55C3 sub-proposal 10, which has been archived now. It was withdrawn by the author. So finally, for important dates, we have no governance cycle in December. So for proposals to be eligible for January 2023 cycle, they need to be posted on the forum by December 10th December 7th at the latest. Yeah, and Pablo is writing here. He just told me that the amendment won't be split finally. It will be ranked choice. So what I mean is the amendment to MIP61. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate it, Gal. And yeah, look out for that ranked choice vote on MIP61 when it comes on the portal. Cool, that should take us to our forum recap update. Looks like we have a pre-prepared video.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the weekly forum recap. This week covering the week of November 10th to the 16th, and we have a couple of announcements and a handful of discussions to go through. So I'm going to try to make this quick, and also huge thanks to Ashton, who has been helping me put all of this together. So let's get started with our first announcement. This post announces 2 candidates, Damon Law and 𝘧𝘪𝘴𝘁, who are seeking election to the DAI Foundation Board in accordance with the foundation's commitment to include members appointed by MakerDAO. And links to their official statements for both candidates can be found in the post, so check it out. And next up, this document posted by the Growth Core Unit is an initial proposal for review regarding adding 𝘧𝘪𝘀 𝘰𝘂 token as a collateral type, and a scope of vault parameters have been agreed upon, which is detailed in the post. Accordance with the agreement, 𝘧𝘪𝘀 must remain an active MCD vault user, maintain no less than 75% of 𝘧𝘪𝘀's DAI stablecoin borrowing activities with highly liquid assets, and utilize the 𝘰𝘂𝘴 depth ceiling as soon as possible. And that's it for announcements. Let's move on to our discussions. Starting off with the latest post from Rune, which outlines some pre-game phase endgame plan milestones that we hope to see in 2023, next year. And he addresses building blocks that need to be in place in order to launch the on-chain components of MakerDAOs, and the list of pre-game products are seen on the screen right now. We also need a minimum viable product of MakerDAO front ends, which will require these following features. And also some initiatives need to be moved beyond the pregame phase, such as setting in place the MakerDAO cluster journey from cluster announcements to normal operations, as well as an endgame constitution and scope frameworks. So I know that was a handful, but yeah, just check out the post if you're interested to learn more about it. And next up, we have by the risk core unit adjusting dust parameters. So with Ethereum gas prices dropping really significantly, as we all know, unfortunately, this post from the risk core unit makes a case for lowering the minimum permitted debt for vaults. And this could enable more accessibility and increase user acquisition. Any potential losses from bad debt are likely to be offset by user acquisition gains, as evidenced by Compound and Aave, neither of which have a minimum dust limit. And the proposed changes come in two options. Option 1 includes a broad reduction of dust limits across vault types, and option 2 includes a more limited dust reductions targeting large cap vaults with the highest potential utility for small users while limiting the risk of liquidation losses. And next up, a nice popular one, discussion about the DAI savings rate. So this post by the MOMC points out that yield spreads between DeFi and TradeFi are growing, and that this trend is unlikely to improve anytime soon. And so they made this post which explores increasing the DSR to distribute some of the extra revenue that Maker is likely to see in the future, and to distribute it to existing DAI holders who are currently not earning any yield. Increasing the DSR would significantly boost yields in protocol like Aave and Compound, which have integrated with the DSR, incentivizing USDC suppliers to migrate instead to DAI. And if this happens successfully, we can expect an accompanying increase in net protocol income. Next one. Pretty quick, New Silver is requesting a series of changes to its real-world asset vault agreement with MakerDAO. Check out the post for some more detail. And for our final discussion, we have recognized delegate 𝘬𝘬𝘳, who points out the importance of having a defined way of calculating the specific value of the surplus buffer in light of MIP84, which activates POV. He states that such calculations will be critical when it comes to working with bonds. And also in the comments, Tario stepped in to inform us that Data Insights Core Unit is already working on a model to accurately reflect actual revenues, including real-world assets. So if you're interested on some more in this conversation, check out the post. And I believe that's all for the forum recap. I kind of covered actually everything that's been on the post, but something that hasn't been covered here in the video is the initiatives in the Help Wanted. So if you're interested, check out the Forum at a Glance post for initiatives in Help Wanted, and also this will be up on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Awesome. Always nice to get the YouTube channel plug in there as well.
Hey,
Appreciate you putting that together. All right, awesome. We'll
Hey
get
everyone.
the main slides back up. And we're going to go into our initiative updates. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be hearing about gasless voting and that new implementation from the Dux team. I believe Dennis is here to share his screen. So David, if you could maybe stop sharing and we'll have Dennis take it away. It's the core unit facilitator from the development and user experience core unit.
That's 𝘧𝘪𝘯𝘀 on the forum. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the facilitator of the Dux team. We are basically an engineering team of Maker. We're not doing smart contract engineering, so product development. So our current focus has been the governance portal, and we are now slowly moving on to a new project that is more relevant to the endgame transition. And today I just want to take a few minutes to talk about a recent update we did, gasless poll voting. It's been, I think, one of our bigger updates ever, and it's been something we've been working on for quite a long time. I'm really happy that we finally launched it. I also noticed some discussion on Discord earlier, and I want to make sure that there's a place for people to ask questions and to address those concerns. I'm going to try and make sure that I can answer all of the questions. If not, I have one of my teammates, Phil. He's an engineer of the Dux team on call as well, and there's a lot of documentation and that kind of stuff that I can refer you to. So let me start by sharing my screen for a little explanation and also a little demo. I'm going to do a live demo. That's something that I shouldn't be doing, but yeah, why not? Feeling pretty comfortable doing that for my Maker community. So yeah, the TLDR is that poll voting used to involve posting a transaction on Ethereum, and obviously with that there comes a lot of friction, right? Because you have to also have gas and pay for those transactions, especially during the bull market or in times when the network is congested. It turned out to be quite expensive. A poll vote could end up being about $7, which was not really acceptable. Very early on, when we started working on the voting portal as a team, this was one of our main, let's say, one of the features that was high on our list. It was a low-hanging fruit where we believed that if we were to be able to deliver something like this, it would objectively lower the friction involved with governance participation, and we also felt that it would impact a lot of features compared to other a lot of users compared to other features that we could build. So it's something that's been discussed also for a long time, and we really committed to it earlier this year. Let me walk you through a little bit of the way that we went about it. So a big challenge in this whole for this particular feature was we had to make some critical decisions about how we're going to offer this, right? Because we could decide to offer like plain L2 voting, where you basically require users to switch networks, but that also requires users to have an account on this L2 and have it funded as well. And also the UX of network switching is right now not that great in DeFi. So that's one of the options we consider. We also considered using Snapshot, but we decided against it for various reasons, mostly related to Maker governance being very bespoke, right? And especially also the off-chain governance process being quite bespoke in terms of the metadata that we want to display. So we ended up at a design where we do not require users to switch networks, right? We instead require them to sign a transaction or sign a message, or without posting a transaction. So you use your wallet to sign a cryptographic message, and this signature gets verified, and then the message gets passed on to what we call a relayer, which is a service that is able to emit or create transactions on another network. So in short, when you use gasless voting, instead of posting a transaction to Ethereum layer 1, you sign a transaction, or you sign a message, using your wallet without posting an actual transaction. And the signed message gets verified, and then it gets passed on to a relayer that then creates a transaction on an L2, in this case Arbitrum, on your behalf. And the nice thing about it, there's a couple of things. As I mentioned earlier, it's the most frictionless way of using an L2 in this process, because you don't need to have an account funded on an L2 and that kind of stuff, or do network switching. Another very important one is that it does not break integrations, because we also have to be very aware of the fact that there's a lot of third-party tools that have integrated with the off-chain governance process of Maker, right? So we have custodians that build their own front end where it allows their clients to interact with governance pools, but also there's governance aggregators that have implemented, and we didn't want to break these integrations. So the nice thing about this system is that it's built on top of what we already had, and that also allows us to offer it as a kind of extra, right? You can decide to use it, but you're always able to use the legacy poll voting, which is using L1 transactions. So that's the way we went about it. The way that it looks, yeah, we tried to make it very seamless with the UI that you're all familiar with. So in short, yeah, I'm just gonna add one abstain vote to my ballot here with our testing wallet, just to, yeah, just for demoing purposes. You go to your ballot as usual, right? And here you can add a comment. And as usual, first you sign a message for the comment, and then you submit the vote. So let's do that first. We sign the comment, and then we submit our ballot. And here we have the new aspect, right? So you're able to use gasless voting. That's actually enabled by default. So it's an opt-out feature where if you'd rather use legacy voting, you can also do that. So if I would click this button, it would just create an L1 transaction as usual, and you pay the transaction fee. There are a bunch of eligibility criteria that we added just for spam protection, and we also added a checklist here. Most of you that are on this call, I'm pretty sure that you're all going to be eligible, because if you have any history with Maker governance, you're going to be able to use this. And then you sign a message where we actually also display the stuff that you're actually signing, right? So you can see the poll idea and the option that you're voting on. If you've added multiple polls in your ballot, then it would actually show all of them in this UI. We sign that message. The message gets passed on to the relayer. This takes a little bit of time, and the relayer then posts the transaction on Arbitrum, and that's actually very, very fast, as you can tell. And if I click this, then I can actually see on Arbiscan, I can see that the transaction was mined. And that means that my vote has been recorded. It might take a while for the voting portal to actually display your vote as well because of caching. But yeah, if I just go to the poll here, you can actually already find the vote by looking at the transactions on Arbitrum. But yeah, in a bit it will also show up on the UI. Let me see if I can already find it. Not yet. No, it probably takes a few minutes. Maybe I'll just pause here and see if there's any comments or maybe questions from the community related to to this feature, but also to the process we've been through. And yeah, happy to answer anything basically.
Got one question in chat to us. Alvin is asking, curious, how does the relayer know that the voting power based on MKR?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually is this so Phil, I see you're on the call. Do you feel like taking this question?
Yeah, sure. So the relayer doesn't know anything about the voting power at that time. So a vote is really just an event that was emitted at a certain block. So what we do is we find the event and we scrape it and we put it in our database, and then the front end pulls those events from the database and combines it with the balance of the user on that exact block. So the relayer itself has no knowledge of the balance. It's something that we do on the front end, which is find the balance at a block and then combine it with the block of that vote.
Very neat. Appreciate the explanation there. Got do one of the recognized delegates saying that he tried the gasless voting and enjoyed it. Brings a question about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Is it on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
I got a question from the way you're presenting this. From the way I interpret this, is there anything preventing someone from doing this voting and then being undelegated or delegated that MKR to another contract and then voting again with the same MKR for that particular vote? Because
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but maybe what would help is if I, yeah.
Because my understanding of the way this was presented is that you do a snapshot of the wallet that was used to make a vote, right? But that is not dynamic. It doesn't track that wallet further on, does it?
Yeah, no, that's actually not how it works. We're not using snapshots. So the way that the governance portal works for polling is we have a so-called blockchain scraper that constantly looks at the MKR balances of these addresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that a vote is recorded, it's actually by a smart contract emitting a vote event, an event on the blockchain, which can then be picked up by the blockchain scraper. And we actually used to do this on Ethereum L1. And what we've done now is we apply literally the same process, but then we also added a new network to that equation, being Arbitrum. And then if you were to vote when you have a wallet with 10 MKR sitting there and you submit a vote, but then you actually sell all of that MKR before the poll ends, then that voting weight will be reflected in the UI. So it's not like a snapshot of vote in that sense.
All right, thank you. That eases my worry.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate the question.
So I was noting, do one of our recognized delegates enjoyed the feature? I'm curious, how much usage have we seen? This is the first week the polling is live for it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, by the way, the vote showed up here. It took a few minutes because of caching, but here it is. And here again, a link to the RB scan. And that's really important. It's really important that all of the votes that are displayed can be found on a blockchain explorer of your choice, right? I mean, that preserves the verifiability of the way that the polling works at Maker. And yeah, that's also something that we respected for this new system. Yeah, in terms of usage, it's been pretty good. I will say that it's not available for multi-sig users, unfortunately. That's quite some people at Maker, but there were some polls that had a pretty good usage. Let me just look up which particular poll that was. I think this might be the one. That was quite kind of cool to see. Yeah, here you have an example. You can easily like distinguish the gasless votes from the legacy votes. For example, you have 𝘧𝘪𝘆 and 𝘱𝘰𝘃 voting with legacy because I know they're using a multi-sig. But people like 𝘬𝘬𝘦, Flipside, Tim Black. I mean, we have a lot of gasless votes, and that's just really cool to see. We also have a lot of non-gasless votes. This might be because we launched it while this poll was live. It might also be because of other reasons. But yeah, good to see people are using it. And also good to see there was some there were a lot of questions in that sense, just to make sure people understand how the system works. And if you're curious, as I said before, so we created a page for it on the operational manual.makerdao.com, where you can read about how the system works. And of course, all of the code is in our GitHub repository. It's all open source, so you can look into how it works, and you can also find the L2 polling contract and the address of the relayer. You can find all of that in the UI. So yeah, if you feel like digging around, then we invite you to do so.
Yeah, I might have missed this, but do you get to, because your wallet wasn't loading, do you get to see what message you're signing? That's part one. And part two, what are some of the attack vectors that you guys thought of when you were designing this? You know, let's not talk about Arbitrum still being a multi-sig, I believe, speaking of multi-sigs. But what are some of the attack vectors you guys thought of? You know, what if a delegate, you know, signs the message they're not supposed to sign, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually forgot your first question. So can you maybe repeat that one? Then I'll answer it first.
But a two-part question, like, do you get to see what message you're signing? Because I didn't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so when I was doing the little demo, I didn't realize that the MetaMask window isn't showing for you all. Yeah, so if you sign the message for the comment, then you just see like a hash that you're signing. So that's not really something that you can make sense of. When you sign the message that actually is about your vote, there you can actually see which poll ideas and which poll option ideas you're voting with, and you can use that information to verify that your message indeed contains the right data. So we made sure that the message that you're signing is actually something that's humanly readable, and you can use it for verification purposes. And when it comes to the attack vectors for this particular system, yeah, there's obviously, like, we're using Arbitrum, and I mean, Arbitrum is pretty much the most used L2 right now. There's a lot of value that's being held there, and we feel pretty good about that. But it's obviously not as robust as Ethereum L1. So that's one we should mention. Another one that we should mention is that we have this system that uses a relayer, right, which is the service that's running somewhere. And there's a possibility where the relayer becomes unavailable because it's being attacked in various ways. And we've made sure that if that happens, that it's something that you can see in the UI. You can understand that the relayer is not online, it's not available, and that it's not possible to use gasless voting, and then you can use legacy voting instead. Another thing is spam, right? I mean, we call it gasless voting. It's not gasless because for every transaction that the relayer generates on Arbitrum, there is a small transaction fee that we actually pay on behalf of the users. It's negligible, and it's going to be even lower in the future. But that's something that we fund, so we have to make sure that the relayer is continuously funded, and we need to make sure that it's not being that it doesn't run low. But again, I think it's important to mention that if any of these attacks are successful, it would not impact legacy voting, right? Because it's still something that we build on top of the existing infrastructure, and that's something we did on purpose.
And so, how many votes did you pre-fund in a way? Like, if for some reason the wallet doesn't get topped up, like how many votes could we execute?
Oh, that's a good question. About 7,000. Yeah, it's a bit of an arbitrary number. We just use some of the funds in our from our team budget that we earmarked for gas expenses. We use that for this as well, and we pre-funded it, and we have some alerts set up that if the balance of the relayer goes low, then we get alerted in time and we can top it up. And that's also something I should mention. Like, during the development of this feature, we've been collaborating a lot with TechOps. That has also been helping us with thoroughly testing this and also setting up a lot of monitoring and alerts, right? Because I mean, it's definitely important that if something goes wrong, that we know, ideally we know it before any of you do, so we can intervene. And that's also why we delayed the launch until after DEF CON, because we just wanted to make sure everything was set up correctly and that all the edge cases were tested. So we're feeling pretty comfortable about it now. If something ever goes wrong, then the UI will handle it correctly, so you can easily understand what's going on. And the good thing is that it's like poll voting can never be impaired because of this new system, because you can always revert back to legacy voting.
Thank God. Thanks.
Right on. I know we got a big discussion topic to get to, so if you do have any more questions about gasless voting, go ahead and think about them. Maybe drop them in the chat now. There was one more area I wanted to cover, Dennis. I know, obviously, when the announcement of gasless voting, a lot of people were asking why wasn't this something that was voted on. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about your kind of idea for how you push changes to the voting portal, and I guess your philosophy as being the team responsible for it.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. And I want to start by just apologizing. I wasn't around for the conversation. I had some days off when that discussion happened, so I wasn't able to jump in. But I understand the concerns. I mean, it definitely touches upon something that is critical to Maker, right? I think the way that I view it is that we, as a team, we are currently owning and maintaining the governance portal and all of the components that it relies on, right? It's not like we explicitly own it, but we have right access to it. And in a way, I feel mandated that our team is, it's our job to keep all of this running and to improve it. In our process, when it comes to which features we develop and how we develop them, we try to really be in tune with what's happening in the DAO, right? So I talked with a lot of people, and yeah, we have a backlog that we share publicly, and this was something that was yeah, it's very obvious for us to work on. Yeah, I also think that it's not something that touches Maker core, right? It's not like we deployed like a new component of the Maker protocol that involves user funds and all that kind of stuff. We basically developed an improvement on top of what's currently out there. We do not force people to use it. We developed it in a way that is in accordance with our values, in the sense that everything is open source. We optimize for verifiability and that kind of stuff. We collaborated with 𝘱𝘬𝘦𝘵𝘱 team to make sure that we, yeah, that they also felt like it makes sense the way that we implemented it. We also talked with some individuals at protocol engineering. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely looking at the chat. I feel like having core units own certain infrastructure. That's definitely it's good that there's some scrutiny there, right? Because that's definitely some kind of attack vector. I would recommend you to look into how it works, right? We have our code base, but who actually owns the infrastructure? It's not like we are in the position to rug pull instantaneously, right? We have ownership distributed between ourselves and TechOps. Then there's also the copyright that's assigned to the DAI Foundation, for example. We really try to take all of that into regard. So happy to see that discussion. I don't feel like, yeah, there's anything that we did wrong in that sense, but I'm, yeah, very open to discussion. Yeah, we also have a Discord channel. So if you feel like asking some more questions or having more conversation, then feel free to join us there. And then, yeah, we're there for you.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Dennis. Last call for questions. I haven't seen any pop up in the chat. Feel free to use the raise hand feature if you want to hop on the mic. All right, awesome. Yeah, thanks for making the time to present to us, Dennis, and really appreciate all the hard work that went into Gasless voting. I know it's been on the roadmap for quite a long time. All right, excellent. So that'll take us into our discussion segment. I know we have perhaps a juicy one today in events of the last couple of weeks with FTX and all sorts of fun insolvencies. Thought it would be good to get the risk core unit on here to talk about how the market has been affecting Maker, some of the things they look at, and yeah, so I'll go ahead and turn over the mic and see if we can learn a thing or two.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Rema. I'm one of the risk core unit members, and today I want to basically talk a little bit about what happened recently in crypto, and also why did we have like the emergency executive vote. So like basically what is going on is that we are experiencing a crypto centralized financial crisis, which also impacts the DeFi ecosystem and basically permissionless protocols to a lesser extent. Like the situation is maybe comparable to some other events which occurred in like crypto in history. What comes to mind is probably mt.gox hack and everything related to this, and then later in time Bitfinex hacks were probably like a similar situation. And what is common to all of these situations is that basically something occurred and it impacts like large amount of entities in crypto. And like why current crisis is much more severe than any other before is because systemic risk is much higher than it used to be. Like, you know, if we just imagine back in the day with mt-gox, the ecosystem was much less developed and basically, you know, impacted people were, you know, random retail traders and maybe some people that managed money for other people, right? But it certainly wasn't, you know, like to scale which currently crypto is developed and so on, right? So basically, like in current ongoing crisis, right, we have several different crypto financial institutions which are impacted. We also have different, you know, crypto projects. Even some of them are calling themselves DAOs, but use FTX for custody and so on. And like, you know, FTX was like this really popular exchange. A lot of entities use them for trading. Some entities use them for custody. You know, there was a lot of lending. There were investments. You know, basically, like majority of financial institutions are somehow involved with current crisis. So basically, in such events, right, when we have like a big, you know, negative event in crypto, what happens is that sentiment sharply shifts, and basically, you know, people which were, you know, hardcore believers are now suddenly, you know, doubting their own decisions. You know, should I remain in crypto and so on. And basically, when such sentiment occurs, right, there is basically a lot of fear, and basically the probability of large market drawdowns is the most probable to occur right now, right? Obviously, you know, like increased volatility and stuff like this is expected, but this is not really a problem for Maker. What is a problem for Maker are large, you know, sharp drops in prices. And yeah, like basically what happened was that prices started to drop when you know, like rumors of FTX started to surface. And like in terms of on-chain collateral, everything was, you know, basically completely tolerable, except specifically Mana A. Like for context, the situation with Mana A was that despite, you know, like not optimal on-chain liquidity, basically the collateralization of position inside this vault type were really high. Here we are speaking about, you know, 800 plus. And this basically means that at the time, the probability of liquidation was, you know, basically almost zero. But like during the recent months, as we experienced, you know, like basically all of the financial markets tanked except some commodities and so on. But basically everything went down, and so did Mana. And basically the vault owners kind of failed to, you know, maintain this high collateralization ratio. And at one point it became, you know, completely intolerable from our perspective. So basically we decided to do something. And the first thing was this, like probably you guys know because you're following it, but like first we just put out, you know, a message that if the exposure of Mana A is not going to be repaid, we're basically going to increase stability fee and change some other parameters. And like initially the manager of basically all of this exposure did basically top up the vaults with more collateral, but we kind of felt that you know, like we strongly believe that the debt should be repaid as soon as possible. And because of this, we kind of decided that, you know, we need to change the parameters as soon as possible. And you know, like the community reacted really good. We managed to execute this really fast, and basically the manager of these positions reacted, and now the debt is basically repaid to much more, you know, tolerable level. So yeah, this was specific to Mana A. Then we also recommended some changes for other less liquid assets, which we basically offer as collateral. This is specifically Matic, 𝘰𝘰𝘮, REM Bitcoin, Mana, which we already spoke about, and Link. And basically like not counting mana in, right? Basically all of these all of these vaults were, you know, completely tolerable, but we still kind of decided that, you know, knowing that some kind of tail risk events are the most probable to happen now, right? It made a lot of sense to us to basically reduce and limit the current exposure. You know, essentially just like limit the debt ceiling, which was previously, you know, opened. Yeah, so like 𝘰 Bitcoin was also a specific situation because like our exposure was really low. I think it still exists. It's $1 million, sorry, 1 million DAI. But because of basically, you know, like the max debt ceiling was 10 million, and we kind of saw that, you know, like some kind of bank run on 𝘰 Bitcoin could happen, and we just didn't want to be exposed to this. So we kind of decided to, you know, completely eliminate exposure on this. Yeah, like otherwise, the current basically risk exposure of on-chain collateral is completely sound and safe. Now that mana is, you know, contracted, like the big assets, 𝘰 staked, Lido staked 𝘰 and 𝘰 Bitcoin are, you know, highly collateralized. Vaults are acting, you know, like they're acting responsibly, basically, you know, maintaining collateral ratio and so on. Yeah, so basically current situation is really sound in terms of, you know, on-chain collateral. And I also want to, you know, you know, like I want to point out that at no point was MakerDAO in some kind of unsustainable situation, basically meaning that even if mana A was not unwind, and even if we would experience, you know, a large drop in prices, for example, 40 or 50% in a couple of hours, we could totally sustain everything, because like most certainly we would create bad debt, especially with mana A, but like the current surplus buffer is, you know, much more than sufficient to absorb any kind of potential bad debt. So like, yeah, from the perspective of on-chain collateral, risk is really managed. Like currently situation is really sound, and like I said, in no point was it unsustainable. Yeah, basically this is what I wanted to say about on-chain collaterals. If somebody wants to ask me something, please do. Then for stable coins and real world assets, like, you know, we don't as a team really feel that we should comment here, because it is not in our domain, nor do we, you know, like possess sufficient expertise to truly understand everything, you know, in terms of traditional companies and structures and so on, right? Yeah, this is it. If somebody wants to ask something, please do.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate you making time to come on and then tell us kind of about the decision making that went into that. If there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand or we'll drop in the chat. I got a good one from Patrick O'Donnell asking if any expectations on the impact that this has for demand for borrowing from certain vaults.
Like probably Jan in our team would be better to comment on this, but unfortunately he's not here because he's, you know, mostly analyzing these kind of things. But from my opinion, right, how I see is that, yeah, I would say that, you know, new demand would be lower, right? It is a crisis after all. People are not really, you know, like thinking about opening leverage and so on. But in terms of current exposure, I would say it is sticky, right? Because, you know, like we have a lot of large entities which are with us for a long time, and, you know, they have no intention to basically leave crypto. At least this is my perception. And also, like with Maker, right, is like a lot of people, I don't think, like understand this, but like Maker is really one of a kind in terms of risk. It is severely less exposed to many different risks compared to other similar protocols, right? And it is quite obvious that a lot of larger players understand this because they're borrowing with us instead of alternatives, even though it's in some examples more expensive and so on. Like, I think that some people definitely appreciate how we do stuff here, right?
Excellent. Well, obviously the events the past few weeks and particularly last few days have got a lot of community interest. Maker kind of bringing that traditionally more conservative mindset to risk framework. So I know we have some members obviously from risk, but we also have strategic finance, some representatives from growth. GovAlpha took the time to put together some questions, aggregate some from community and supplement them some, just kind of so we could go over some of the things people are asking and maybe get some questions answered for the recording. David, if you don't mind taking us to the next slide.
Yeah, I just want to add this, if anybody wants to ask something, you can always ask us in the risk public channel in the Maker Discord. Otherwise, you can also add me on Discord and I will be happy to basically answer anything.
Excellent. Thanks very much. We will get to perhaps some more on-chain questions, but I know at least in recent days, a lot of the community questions have been centered around some of our centralized stablecoins in particular. So thought make sure we at least get to those. Looks like we are doing pretty good on time, but we might have a few more questions for you here in a bit. Obviously, a lot of crypto Twitter in the last few days has been asking about Gemini. There's been reports on some issues at Genesis where a lot of the major crypto brokers or exchanges park their assets for yield. So this led to Gemini turning off withdrawals, or at least turning off the interest rates for Gemini Earn products. Obviously, people see there's problems with Gemini Earn and they ask what's going on with GUSD. So we grabbed a few questions from forum, edited them up, made them okay for the call here. I think just kind of off the top, a lot of people are asking like, what would happen to Maker's assets or GSD if Gemini entered bankruptcy? I'm guessing Seb might be a great person to ask for a lot of these. Seb, are you with us?
Yeah, sure. So for the first one, what would happen to Maker assets, GUSD, if Gemini entered bankruptcy? The truth is Gemini is a trust and is more regulated than, for instance, Circle. But you can follow what is happening with Circle in this discussion, what would happen if Circle default, and that's in their documentation for the SPAC merge. And so they say, well, it should be for segregated for customers because they are holding funds in the name of customers. So it should be segregated, but as it's a digital assets, there is no legal precedent because there was never a stablecoin issuer that defaulted and goes into bankruptcy in the US. So in the US, the judge on bankruptcy can decide a lot of stuff, so we don't know. The main issue I would say would be that it would be frozen for some time. Would it be 1 day, 1 week? We don't know. Usually it's not a bank, but usually sometimes if a bank is defaulting, it's merged, and sometimes it's fixed quite quickly, but they might be a bit slower for Gemini. I will just emphasize that there is something that is important to understand is that Gemini Earn, despite being called Gemini Earn, is not a product. It's a product for Gemini, but the customer is not facing Gemini. It's not a Gemini that is borrowing from the customer. It's a Genesis that is borrowing from the customers, and Gemini is only acting on behalf of the customer as an agent to lend to Genesis. So I think it's a bit different, and the Circle, so the issuer of USDC, has exactly the same product. So is exactly in the same situation as Gemini. So having GUSD or USDC is probably not such a big difference. one can make the case that Gemini is more regulated than Circle. Maybe I'm not sure it's a big difference. So it might be a bit better to be in GUSD, but it's difficult to know. On the next question, what would liquidating GUSD on-chain looks like? We have a PSM with the possibility to have a negative TIN that's already developed, but it's not live. So we are not able to sell GUSD with a discount. So that would be the best way to dispose of GUSD, but it's not available to us. So that would be the best way, but we would have to deploy. As you know, that would take, I guess, 1 week, maybe less if PE works quickly, then 2 days to use the delay that we have on executive spells. So it might be over until we are getting there. Same, how quickly could we redeem GUSD for USD? I mean, we would have to work with a market maker, so meaning that we will spin up an entity and make sure that it's not risky, because if you just redeem all GUSD for USD and it's all by someone shady in, I don't know, Cayman, BVI or Bahamas, that's probably not the best thing we want to do. So we want to do it safely, so that would take at least a few months. So way too much anyway. And same on the reverse. And Gemini, yeah, Gemini provide proof of reserve. The last one, I think, was end of September, and they hold most of their assets in bank deposits at 4 banks. I don't remember the name of those, but Silvergate is one of those. The most not in a difficult situation, but where there are some speculation at least. So yeah, it's mainly a bank deposit, so it shouldn't be much of a problem. And some money market funds, but on a smaller scale. As there was an increase in GUSD circulation lately, we don't know where they put stakes the money since then, but I would assume it's in a bond deposit as well. Obviously, those reports are, yes, they are audited, I think. I don't know if there are more questions.
Yeah, sure. We got a few more. Feel free to raise hands or drop questions in the chat. But if not, we'll keep chugging along with a few other topics of interest. So obviously, some concern about Gemini. People also had some concerns about Coinbase, and in particular, the MIP-81. That's the Coinbase institutional rewards MIP that we passed that would have us sending some of the USDC from the PSM over to Coinbase custody account, where we would then be earning rewards for it. So one particularly relevant question is, like, do these events affect the implementation of MIP-81? That might be stratified. Yeah, if you can answer, go ahead, Sid.
Not really. MIP-21 is, so we worked with CS and Coinbase to see if we could use a smart contract. That would have been awesome, because that removes custody risk and allows access to quick liquidity, so we can have a load balancer between the MIP-81 and the USDC PSM. Sadly, for regulatory reasons, Coinbase cannot do this because they are regulated. So they need to be sure that, for instance, if MakerDAO is on the OFAC list, they can kind of froze the assets. It's not much more concern for us, because if we are on, for instance, on the OFAC list, well, Circle will freeze the USDC anyway, so it's not a big difference. But they want to be able to do it as well. So they say, yeah, we can have a smart contract, but we should be able to stop any withdrawal with some kind of delay and so on. So it was quite convoluted. So we are still exploring that path, but there is no easy solution. And so we are also looking at doing it fully off-chain, or let's say with using legal entities that will tell. So sending to Coinbase is not an issue because it's an ETH address, so it's possible to send it. But to get the USDC back, we need to have someone, a legal entity, asking Coinbase to send the USDC back. And for that, we need someone to be willing to take the liability of doing this action. So we are looking with different arrangers, so mainly Monetarist and Blocktober, to see how much they would charge to make this service. Because obviously that's liability for them. That's more complex than just using a smart contract. So that's kind of the problem. So that will take quite some time. There are also some concerns because we want to be sure that it's fine because it's 1.6 billion. So we might have to do an SPF to get some legal advices, stuff like that. So that will take quite some time going forward. And who has reached out to Coinbase Institutional to discuss and get specific insurance? What do they say? What they say that they are top-notch custody, and I don't doubt that they are regulated, and I guess that's not the main problem. In my view, obviously, there are always risks.
Awesome. I know on the forum, someone from the Growth Core unit had responded that they have also been in touch. I don't know if there's any further information there, but worth mentioning that as well. We do have a question coming in from one of our recognized delegates, Qianca from AcreInvest. I'll just read it out so I don't accidentally make a mistake trying to verify this on the fly. So can 𝘱𝘪𝘯𝘢𝘕 speak to the DPEG risk, which could be market sentiment driven? So part of proof of reserves, bankruptcy issues, which we can, as a DAO, not as a legal person, participate in. The market can decide to dump the centralized stablecoins for a number of reasons. Do we have a risk analysis and response plan if our stablecoin collateral begins to depeg significantly? So kind of crossing
So on that front, I would say that there is not much fluctuation in the amount of DAI outstanding. I mean, a bit, but we have big PSMs. So there is no stress on this front. I don't know how much USDC are in the USDC PSM, but I know that the GUSD is almost filled, so $500 million. USDP is a bit below $500 million. And the USDC, I think it's at least 2.3 billion. So I'm not sure that's much of a concern right now, but the plan would be if there is a stress, let's say we go below 1 billion overall, or even below 2 billion, all PSM considered. I think the best course of action would be to increase the stability fees on the crypto-backed loans vaults to incentivize people to repay. We can also unwind the Uniswap LPs, which are not generating much anyway, so that's not very costly for us. And then we can ask MIP 65 to repay the cash that we send to them lately. So there is I wouldn't say that we have a lot of illiquidity stuff that we cannot unwind within a few months, let's say within 1 month even. We have some centrifuge assets and Success and HVB, but those are only 150 million. So it would require a lot of unwinding of DAI to go to this stage.
And what about like GUSD, for example, right? We saw a lot of speculation on Twitter. So what if some of these Twitter people were to gather up and start trying to sell en masse, and we actually saw a depeg of GUSD? What would the protocol's response be there?
If there is a depeg of GUSD, so currently GUSD is still trading more or less at par, and the GUSD PSM is not even full. There is not so much liquidity on DeFi. I have seen that most of the GUSD at Gemini have been redeemed because people were probably getting scared, so they redeemed. But in DeFi, it's not moving so much. So I think there wouldn't be much implication. because even if Gemini is not redeeming, there will be some market makers making the swap and the arbitrage. So I'm quite sure if we would be selling our GUSD at 99.7 cents, well, someone will take the trade and redeem at Gemini, because Gemini redeemed 150 million those last 2 days. Without any concern, no one claimed on Twitter that it wasn't able to redeem GUSD.
So you asking about USDC as well. For some basic edification, right? We do have liquidations off for these, right? These are PSMs, so it's not like the system is looking at an oracle and saying, "Oh, you're below 99 cents on the dollar. We need to liquidate." So what might happen to the protocol? What might be some actions we'd take if we were to see a pretty serious depegging event? It might be more Remus alley, I don't know.
Yes, sorry, can you just repeat?
So yeah, seeing as we don't really have liquidations enabled for PSMs, what would happen if there were a depeg? Obviously, we wouldn't programmatically liquidate them. So what risks does the protocol have, and what are some actions we could take to mitigate it?
So like, it is, if the USDC depegs, right, it's really important why it did, and it is not, like 100% clear what would happen with DAI. Like one obvious, way of thinking about it is that, people would obviously say, hey, DAI exposed to USDC, so DAI is also, like basically toxic, let's say. But like I think that why I said it's not clear is because currently all this excess demand, right, for DAI, which we are experiencing, is exactly because other stable coins even exist. Basically, like if we would be in some kind of crypto environment where, centralized stable coins would not exist, we would not have this excess demand for DAI. And the reason why this excess demand for DAI exists is because across, all of different automated AMMs, basically, if you have a pair with, like let's say Triple, right, which was historically like the most liquid market on Ethereum, basically, like if you have increasing supply of USDC and USDT coming into the ecosystem, this means that like you will have demand for DAI, right? So it is like obviously it would not be good, right? But it is not 100% clear, because in one way this excess demand would not even exist anymore, right? But like I just think that obviously we have to think about such events and probably have concrete plans what to do. But like there are obviously some very radical things which we could do. But yeah, like probably for questions such as this should be like 2 years ago or whenever we introduced PSM. And like basically this decision was done back then, right? It was not done like 1 month ago or something.
Makes sense. Appreciate that, Roma. We did throw together some general questions that might be a little more up your alley here. I think you kind of addressed a lot of them in your kind of message to us, particularly about kind of the on-chain liquidations and not being too worried about those. The value at risk question does sound like a good one to me. Like, do you have figures on how our value at risk compares to, like, say, a month ago? And due to the recent volatility and speculation, is there any changes you expect risk core unit to be recommending to, I guess, kind of keep us safer?
Sorry, which question are you referring to? Should we just go one after another, or?
If you're comfortable running through them, yeah, please. We can start with the stake deep one and the chance of depegging there.
Okay, so like, obviously nobody really knows like what is going to happen with these liquid staked Ethereum products, right? But what is certain is that, like if you just look at Cosmos or, whatever, blockchain which uses some form of proof of stake, you will see that majority of native coins are staked. And basically we should, operate under this perception that also in the Ethereum ecosystem, especially, after the withdrawals are enabled and so on, like a lot of it will be staked. So, it is just like, like essentially either we need to develop our own staking product, which I think we are. But yeah, like it is inevitable that we will need to be exposed towards some assets. Like then why we think Rocket ETH is interesting is because, like obviously we want to cover as many of them as possible. We want, like current situation with staked ETH, leader staked ETH, it's not perfect, right? We would preferably want to see basically like more ETH being staked, through different validators and so on, and like pools. Then to
Yeah, if that's all for the first question, I think Nadia said she could answer the second one.
okay, perfect. Go on, Nadia.
Yeah, so like, first of all, let's remember that Maker as a protocol is permissionless, so we shouldn't know the identity of the vault owners unless they want to be identified. So sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not the case. I will say like 99% of the times that's not the case, and that is because of the nature of DeFi. When the vault owner wants to like let us know his identity, yes, we are in contact with them, and we always try to maintain an open channel with them to keep them informed about what's happening in the protocol. Still, we really think that Maker as a protocol is not for like users, it's more for like other projects to use it. So we prefer like the responsibility of user comms, it's on like our partners like Oasis or DeFi Saver, that in the end, that's what users are like, the front end of the users to have access to the Maker protocol. Like there's not a front end for these users to access the Maker protocol. So yeah, I don't know who asked that, but I would like to understand why the person that asked that question. Okay, yeah, Kianga, do you want to like let us know why?
Sure, I can just briefly, probably easier than the chat. Kianga Davrington from Delegate Acre Invest. It was kind of in the context of the vault thread that was about, just our risk around the vaults and demands for the vault. So it was kind of, wanting to see to what extent we can anticipate large vault holders' future decisions. So do we have those communication channels that you spoke about? So we'd have some kind of heads up, if someone was thinking about closing their vault, and then there goes like a big chunk of our anticipated revenue. So it was in the context of kind of managing our risk as a business, well, as a protocol, in terms of anticipating some of those potential drawdowns for the future.
Yeah, interesting. Yes. Well, most of all of our decisions are taken based on the market, not our users' desires. Like sometimes they want something, but we prefer to do something else, because for us the most important thing is to protect the protocol. One example is what happened with Mana. Like we were super exposed to Mana, and of course they didn't want to close their position, but we prefer to protect the protocol. And like the most important thing for us is like how the market is at the moment. So like in the case of Mana, we are in contact on the with the decentralized foundation, but we don't know who are the vault owners. Of course, like we communicate this to the Decentraland Foundation, and they can help us whenever they know, because sometimes the vault owners are investors that they know, but most of the times, as I say, we don't know. That's information that we don't know, and I think that's okay because, yes, of the nature of the protocol.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Nadia, because also you reminded me the other line of thinking there was us anticipating a counterparty in distress, right? So to the extent that we know, to Seb's comment in the chat, to the extent that we know who the large vault holders are, and then we see that they're going out of business, that also helps us prepare. And I think I'll look for it and put in the chat if I can find it. I think that was a response to my question that showed some data that we do know the identity of a number of the large vault holders, and that helps us to be able to not just anticipate where they may voluntarily decide to exit, but also where we can be very proactive if it looks like contagion is reaching some of the vaults that we're depending on for our revenue. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
like maybe I can just add, like in terms of risk, basically, if we can, basically conclude something from on-chain stuff and basically stuff that everybody can see, we do, but it is always an assumption, right? So that's why you will usually see us using some kind of, 7 siblings, for example. Yeah, okay, maybe I will answer this third question. Basically, let's just say like the risk, right, decrease recently, basically from July on, we use a different metric which we called capital at risk, but it is like, let's say, similar to this one. And essentially like it decreased significantly. So for example, if I just check, I don't know, for example, some 7-day rolling average in May, 20th of May, it was like this metric was 41 million, and currently like this same metric is 11 million. So it definitely decrease in the absolute terms, but we also need to take into the consideration that the debt exposures also significantly increased, right? But in terms of let's say recent week, since this FTX Alameda thing started, basically risk increased, but mostly because of mana, which is now handled. So currently the risk is really tolerable in terms of on-chain collateral, at least.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then for the last question, like basically the situation is that you have like a vault type, and then you have current situation inside, right? And we always looked at depth weighted collateral ratio. Obviously we look at many things, but mana a vault situation was like a great example where like if a couple of months ago a vault type was collateralized with 800%, it can go down really fast potentially, right? But in terms of like what should we keep an eye on is we obviously are like more concerned about less liquid assets, but like I said before, currently like it is really managed and like not problematic. But like we are also keeping an eye, for example, for staked ETH DPEG, because this could potentially be like problematic. But yeah, like I think that, and like a lot of people think so, that it is very improbable for staked ETH to DPEG significantly, right? Because basically there are so many buyers in this ecosystem, right? Crypto is still like this emerging financial market and so on, right? And I would be quite surprised if, for example, Lido staked ETH DPEGs for more than 10%, for example. And I don't know, like, for example, we are also, like this is more out of curiosity and stuff. For example, this InstaDepp has some product, right, where you basically construct this position where you use staked ETH as collateral and you borrow ETH. And basically, like, you do this kind of leverage using ETH for debt. And the position is really good because it is not really exposed to market risk, but it is exposed to DPEG risk. And like just a couple of days ago, we were checking this vault of InstaDepp. I think it's called 𝑖ETH or something like this. And basically the position was exposed towards, is exposed towards 14% DPEG. So basically, you know, like, yeah, like, you know, even them, right, they could sustain significant DPEG.
Awesome, appreciate it, Roma. I am noting we are getting close to the end of our time here. I think we do have one more slide that's talking a little bit about potential, I guess, relating to endgame and Maker going forward, how we would incorporate some of these items into scope management process. If anyone does want to speculate or talk about their understanding of endgame, would be happy to do it. But also noting the time here, happy to do one last call for general questions as well. A nice hello from Shupi there, one of our nice delegates. Yeah, it might be worthwhile to figure out a call or some further exploration of some of these reward asset crypto collateral crossovers, right, with some of the stable coins. And maybe then we can talk a little bit more about endgame. But noting the time and the lack of questions and raised hand, but I think it's probably good to call it there. Just want to thank everyone for spending some of their day with us, especially those who asked questions, engaged with us in chat, and made this a fun hour and a half to spend with together. Obviously, let's keep the conversations going on the forum, right? Huge thanks to people like Alpha who helped me put together those slides for questions. We, like you said, largely sourced those from the Discord and from the forum, so those are from our community. Thanks for being interested, for wondering about how Maker is doing things and making us a more resilient community. We'll be back here same time, same place next week. So yeah, let's keep the conversation going and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye now.